Have you ever had one of those days where you feel like you're just going through the motion?
Oh, definitely.
Like you're operating on some kind of invisible autopilot?
Yeah, exactly. Maybe you drive to work and, barely remember the journey.
Totally. Or you find yourself just repeating old habits, old patterns without even really thinking about it.
It's such a common experience, isn't it? And it really points to, well, one of the most powerful parts of our mind, the subconscious. It's often hidden, but it's there,
Running the show.
pretty much.
Hmm.
A huge chunk of our daily lives are, run by this hidden force.
So here's the big question then. What if you could not only understand this powerful force, but actually learn to direct it?
Now that's an idea.
And that's exactly what this deep dive is all about. We're exploring the incredible world of the subconscious mind.
We're going to look at, what it is, how it seems to operate.
And some really fascinating techniques, right? From all sorts of places, traditional meditations, even cutting-edge neuroscience research, all claiming to help you access and, well, influence it.
Our mission today, really, is to boil down the key ideas from the sources we've looked at, give you a shortcut, kind of, to being well-informed about this huge potential sitting there in your subconscious.
And maybe get some insights on how this knowledge might actually apply to your own life.
Exactly.
Okay, so to really get a grip on this subconscious autopilot, we first need to kind of define what we're talking about.
Right.
One of our sources brings up the concept and actually points to the cerebellum. You know, the part of the brain we usually link with coordination and balance.
Yeah, movement mostly.
Well, this source suggests that's the place that stores our habits, attitudes, behaviors, the subconscious stuff.
Huh. Interesting take.
And here's the kicker. The claim is you spend almost 95% of your day using your subconscious mind.
Wow. 95%.
I mean, no wonder life can feel like you're just on autopilot sometimes.
It really explains a lot, doesn't it? If you think about it, that clarifies why ingrained habits can be so incredibly tough to change just by deciding to.
Yeah, willpower alone often isn't enough.
Exactly. Think about breathing. You don't consciously tell yourself, breathe in, breathe out, right?
Ouch, thankfully.
It's automatic.
Yeah.
But you can choose to take a deep breath or hold your breath for a bit. So that shows that interesting link, the relationship between conscious control and that underlying unconscious process.
It's almost like your mind speaks different languages then, depending on what state it's in.
That's a great way to put it. And those languages, well, they correspond to different brainwave frequencies. Each one is associated with a particular state of consciousness.
Okay, break that down for us.
Right.
Brain waves.
Right, so let's look at how these different states connect. The lowest frequency waves are delta waves.
Delta. Okay.
You see these mainly in very young children, like under 2 years old.
Mm.
And in adults, they're typical of really deep restorative sleep.
So very relaxed, almost offline.
Pretty much. The thinking, analytical part of the brain is operating at a very low frequency. Information from the outside world can apparently come in relatively unfiltered, without much critical thinking getting in the way.
Like a sponge.
Kind of like that, yeah. Imagine baby's brain just soaking everything up. Then you move up a bit to theta waves, often seen in children aged about 2 to 6. This state is often described as trance-like, very imaginative. Kids are living more in their inner world, showing less sort of rational, critical thinking.
Ah, that explains why they believe in Santa Claus so easily.
Exactly. It's why they tend to just accept what they're told. It's considered the realm of the subconscious mind, very open to suggestion.
So that's a key period for subconscious programming then.
Seems that way, according to these sources. Then as kids get older, maybe 6 to 8, their brain waves shift again into the alpha range.
Alpha getting faster.
Yep. This is when the analytical brain starts to develop more. They begin drawing conclusions, figuring out how the world works, defining external rules.
It's still imaginative.
Oh yeah, imagination is still very active. Think about really involved pretend play. That's strong in the alpha state.
Okay, so delta, theta, alpha. What's next?
Beta waves. After about age 8, the frequencies generally get higher, moving into beta. And this is often described as the point where the direct highway between the conscious and subconscious mind starts to have more traffic, maybe gets a bit narrower.
Less direct access.
Something like that. And beta itself has different ranges.
Oh.
Yeah, there's mid-range beta. That's associated with focused attention. Like right now, if you're really concentrating on learning something new or deeply engaged in a task.
Like listening to this deep dive.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
That focus state is why you remember things better when you're actively involved, actively learning, not just passively, say, reading something.
Makes sense. And the other beta range?
High range beta.
Yeah.
This is your fight or flight state.
Ah, the stress response.
Exactly. Your brain is hyper-focused on potential threats in the environment. Now, this is perfectly normal and useful if, a lion jumps out at you.
Which, thankfully, doesn't happen often.
Right. But the problem is, this state can get triggered by everyday stressors, too, like that overflowing email inbox or a looming deadline.
And being stuck in high beta constantly. That's not good.
No, that prolonged state can really wear you down, mentally and physically.
Okay, so if our subconscious is running this autopilot and it's kind of got these different operating states linked to brainwaves, how do we actually, get into the cockpit? How do we steer?
Right. This is where it gets really interesting and potentially empowering.
Yeah.
The idea is you can intentionally shift into different brainwave states.
You can choose to slow down your brainwaves?
Apparently, yes.
Yeah.
For example, to get into that calmer alpha state, simple things work. Just closing your eyes, that alone cuts out about 80% of the sensory information flooding your brain.
Wow, 80% just from closing your eyes.
Yeah. Then, if you consciously focus on your breath, shift your attention inwards, away from the outside world, that naturally starts to slow your brainwaves down.
Leading to relaxation.
Exactly. Relaxation, less frantic analysis. It's why things like counting to 10 when you're angry or taking a few deep breaths actually work. They physically shift your brain state.
Simple but effective. Okay, what about getting even deeper into theta? You mentioned that imaginative state.
Yeah, theta is associated with deeper relaxation, meditation, and that high suggestibility. One visualization technique mentioned in our sources is pretty vivid. You imagine the room you're in slowly filling up with water.
Okay.
You feel it rising, first around your feet, then your legs, your waist, your chest, until you're completely submerged in this imaginary water.
Feeling the sensation of it.
Right, really engaging the senses. And then the final step is you imagine yourself floating away from your physical body, creating this sense of separation between mind and body.
Whoa. That sounds intense, like a form of self-hypnosis almost.
It definitely has elements of that.
Yeah.
It's about using powerful sensory imagination to bypass the conscious critical mind and access that deeper, more receptive theta state.
Which brings us back to understanding the subconscious itself. How do our sources describe its fundamental nature?
Well, one description that really stands out is that the subconscious is impersonal, non-selective, and accepts as true whatever your conscious mind believes to be true.
Impersonal and non-selective, so it doesn't judge.
Apparently not. It's also said to control all your vital bodily processes, heart rate, digestion, breathing, all that automatic stuff. And quite remarkably, some sources claim it holds the answers to basically all problems you might encounter.
Holds the answer, so it's like this huge database, but also the operating system.
Kind of, yeah. And crucially, it doesn't argue controversially. It just executes the ideas it accepts.
Whether they're good for you or not.
Exactly. Good or bad, helpful or harmful. Whatever you claim mentally and feel is true, one source emphasizes, your subconscious mind will accept and bring forth into your experience. It's like a faithful servant, but it doesn't question the orders.
Okay, so that puts a huge emphasis on the orders we're giving it. We're like the captain navigating a ship, as one source put it.
That's the analogy used, yeah. Your conscious thoughts, your beliefs, your dominant feelings, your mental images, those are the orders you're giving.
And the subconscious just carries them out, shaping our experiences.
That's the core idea, which logically leads us straight into techniques for, reprogramming it, giving it better orders.
Okay, let's hear them. Reprogramming techniques.
A big one is suggestion. The subconscious is described as highly amenable to suggestion. We see this dramatically in hypnosis, right?
Yeah, stage hypnotists making people cluck like chickens.
Or even inducing physical symptoms. Sources mention suggestions leading to high temperatures or even temporary paralysis under hypnosis. It shows how powerful suggestion can be.
But we can use this power ourselves.
Absolutely. That's autosuggestion, suggesting ideas to yourself. This can apparently be used to banish fears, overcome negative conditions, and install more positive beliefs.
Do we have an example of that?
Yes, a really compelling one about a young singer. She had terrible stage fright, apparently failed 3 auditions because she'd just seize up.
Oh, wow, that's tough.
But she started this practice. Several times a day, and especially before sleep, she would quietly and calmly affirm to herself, feeling it as she said it. I sing beautifully. I am poised, serene, confident, and calm.
Repeating it with feeling.
Exactly. Slowly, quietly, with conviction. The source says within about a week, She went to an audition feeling completely confident and gave a wonderful performance.
Just from that consistent auto-suggestion? Amazing.
It really highlights the power of repetition and belief. And this principle also means you can defend yourself against negative suggestions from others.
What our sources call destructive heterosuggestion, like other people's negativity.
Yeah, or negativity from the media, or just general societal beliefs that don't serve you. By understanding you can consciously reject those external suggestions and intentionally replace them with constructive auto-suggestions, you basically neutralize their power over your subconscious.
Taking back control of your mental environment.
Precisely. It's about being the gatekeeper of your own mind.
Okay, another technique mentioned was the mental movie method. That sounds intriguing.
It is. This involves creating a vivid mental picture, like a short movie scene, of your desired outcome already achieved.
So not just thinking about it, but seeing it as done.
And feeling it. That's key. Really conjuring up the joy, the relief, the thankfulness, as if it's already happened. Especially doing this just before you fall asleep in that drowsy, receptive state.
Why before sleep, specifically?
Well, that's when the conscious mind is quieting down, and the subconscious is believed to be more accessible, more open to impression.
Oh, okay. Like planting a seed just before the fertile ground is most receptive.
That's a good analogy. The common thread in many of these techniques isn't just visualization, it's the feeling. Feeling the reality of what you desire. It's about essentially convincing your subconscious that the future you want is already here.
Do we have stories about this mental movie thing working?
We do. There's the story of a Mr. Broke who was, well, broke. Out of work, bills piling up.
Relatable for some, unfortunately.
Indeed. So every night and morning for about 3 weeks, he made it a practice to repeat, "Thank you, Father, for my wealth." He didn't just say the words. He worked to feel a deep sense of gratitude, as if he were already wealthy.
Okay, focusing on the feeling of thankfulness.
Yes. And the story goes, soon after, he bumped into a former employer he hadn't seen in ages. This led to a conversation, then an offer of a lucrative position, and the employer even loaned him money to tide him over. He apparently became a vice president later on.
Wow. From repeating, "Thank you for my wealth," with feeling.
It suggests the power of aligning your inner state with a desired outer reality. Another quick one. Someone trying to sell property. They kept visualizing taking down the for sale sign, tossing it in the garage, and really feeling the satisfaction of the deal being done.
Just imagining the sign gone.
And feeling the completion. The source says the very next day, they got a deposit from a buyer. That feeling of certainty seems crucial.
It's like bypassing doubt.
Exactly. Then there's something called the affirmative method, described as a potent form of prayer, really focusing on positive statements of truth.
Affirmations again, but maybe framed as prayer.
Sort of. One example is a minister who apparently had lung cancer. He would get into a relaxed, drowsy state again, that receptive state, and affirm, "The perfection of God is now being expressed through me. The idea of perfect health is now filling my subconscious mind."
Focusing on perfect health as a present reality.
Yes. And the account states he experienced a complete healing. It points to the power of holding a firm mental concept of wholeness, especially when the conscious mind's resistance is lowered.
Incredible. Are there other methods?
Yes, the argumentative method. This is associated with a historical figure, Dr. Phineas Parkhurst Quimby, a pioneer in what we would call mental healing.
Argumentative, like arguing with yourself.
In a way, yes. It involves using reason, arguing with yourself, or guiding a patient to reason that sickness often stems from false beliefs, from ingrained negative thought patterns. And crucially, that these patterns can be changed through conscious effort and understanding.
So it's more about intellectual conviction.
It seemed to involve that, yes. Quimby famously treated a patient described as a cripple. His method involved contemplating the divine ideal, the inherent perfection, vitality, intelligence within everyone, and then logically convincing the patient that their ailment was rooted in a distorted, twisted pattern of thought that misrepresented this underlying perfection.
And did it work?
According to the story, the patient was convinced and subsequently walked without crutches. It's about challenging and replacing the fundamental belief that sustains the condition.
Fascinating. One more.
The decree method. This uses strong, authoritative words backed by faith and conviction.
Like making a command.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
There's an anecdote about a young girl who was being persistently bothered by an unwanted suitor. Nothing else had worked. So she used a decree. She stated firmly, "I release his name unto God. He is in his true place at all times. I am free, and he is free." I now decree that my words go forth into infinite mind, and it brings it to pass. It is so.
Very specific and commanding language.
And she spoke with real conviction. The story says the man completely vanished from her life, never called, never seen again. The power seemed to lie in the absolute certainty and authority of her decree.
These methods all seem powerful. Is there a catch? Or a principle that ties them together?
There's a very important principle highlighted, often called the law of reversed effort. It was articulated by the French psychologist Émile Coué.
Law of reversed effort, what does that mean?
Basically, Coué said, when your conscious desire and your subconscious imagination are in conflict, your imagination will always win.
Imagination wins over desire.
If they're fighting, yes. Think about trying really hard not to worry about something. What usually happens?
You worry more.
Exactly. Trying too hard, using pure willpower against a strong negative imagination can actually reinforce the thing you're trying to avoid. It's like driving with one foot pushing the gas, desire, and the other slamming the brake, conflicting imagination.
So you just spin your wheels or even go backwards.
Precisely. The goal isn't to fight the subconscious, but to reconcile desire and imagination, to get them pulling in the same direction.
How do you do that?
By using techniques like the mental movie or affirmations with feeling, you're essentially training your imagination to align with your desire. There's an example of a young girl facing a complex legal battle.
Okay.
Consciously, she desired a harmonious solution, but her imagination was running wild with fears of failure, bankruptcy, all the worst-case scenarios. That's reversed effort in action.
So what did she do?
Instead of fighting the fear directly, every night before sleep, she started vividly imagining her lawyer calling her, hearing his voice saying, "There has been a perfect harmonious solution found." She focused on the feeling of relief, the joy of resolution.
Changing the mental movie.
Exactly. Aligning her imagination with her desire.
Yeah.
And the outcome. The case was apparently settled out of court amicably, just as she had imagined. It shows the power of making your inner world match your outer goal, making that positive outcome the path of least resistance for your subconscious.
This is all fascinating. It really leads us into thinking about the real-world impacts, doesn't it? And maybe some nuances we need to consider, like the mind-body connection.
Oh, absolutely crucial. The link between our thoughts, our emotions, and our physical health is profound, according to these sources.
How so?
Well, negative ideas, persistent negative emotions like anger, fear, jealousy, vengefulness, they're described as literally poisoning your subconscious mind.
Poisoning it. That sounds serious.
And the idea is that this inner poison can then manifest physically. Things like ulcers, heart problems, high blood pressure, sometimes linked back to these chronic negative mental states held in the subconscious. It really hammers home how much our mental diet affects our physical reality.
Are there modern approaches that work with this connection?
Yes, several. One mentioned specifically is the neuroemotional technique, or NET.
NET. What does that do?
It's a mind-body technique designed to help people identify and process unresolved, often unconscious, emotional stress that might be locked in the body.
Locked in the body.
Yeah. And patients often report feeling immediately lighter, less burdened, after a session where they've addressed one of these underlying stresses.
Subjective feelings are one thing, but is there any, objective evidence?
Interestingly, yes. Some studies using fMRI brain scans have apparently shown changes in brain activity in areas associated with the perceived emotional trauma after NET interventions. Like those areas literally start to calm down or heal.
Wow. That connects to something Bruce Lipton said, right?
Exactly. His quote, "The moment you change your perception is the moment you rewrite the chemistry of your body." It fits perfectly. Changing the perception, the emotional charge, seems to directly impact physiology.
So NET is one technique. Are there others mentioned for working with the unconscious mind, especially for healing?
Yeah, the sources list quite a few others that are considered effective in this area. Things like hypnosis, which we touched on, Psych-K, emotional freedom technique, or EFT.
EFT, the tapping technique.
That's the one. Also, somatic experiencing, which focuses on bodily sensations, and body talk. There's a whole range of modalities exploring this mind-body link.
And there was a case study related to this.
Yes, quite a striking one. A patient suffering from both tinnitus ringing in the ears and vertigo. These symptoms significantly improved after they used a mind-body technique to address suppressed shame connected to an old traumatic event.
So the physical symptoms were linked to unresolved emotion.
That was the connection made. And what's really interesting is that the patients found their symptoms could actually be triggered by the anniversary date of their husband's death.
Whoa, an anniversary effect.
Yeah, it highlights just how powerful these unconscious links between dates, memories, emotions, and physical symptoms can be.
Okay, so beyond physical health, what about our everyday choices? Does the subconscious play a role in decision making?
Oh, massively. Far more than we probably realize. We like to think we're making rational, conscious decisions all the time.
But maybe not.
Well, research suggests that intuitive decision-making, driven by the subconscious, is much more common than we previously thought.
How does that work? Is it just a gut feeling?
It's often experienced that way, but there's more going on. It seems our brain is constantly associating subtle cues, even subliminal messages we're not consciously aware of, with emotional responses deep in our limbic system.
The emotional brain?
Right. So the brain doesn't necessarily need to consciously know all the details about something to learn whether it's valuable or threatening, and then nudge our decisions accordingly.
That was looked at in a study, wasn't it, on Gen Z?
Yes, a specific study investigated this unconscious perceptual processing in decision-making, focusing on young adults aged 18 to 25, Generation Z.
How did they test it? You can't just ask someone about their unconscious processes.
No, you need clever methods. They use something called a backward masking visual paradigm.
Fancy name. What is it?
Basically, they flash images or words on a screen so incredibly quickly that you can't consciously register seeing them. They're masked by another image shown immediately after. But the idea is your unconscious mind still perceives them.
Sneaky. So what did they find?
A couple interesting things. First, verbal stimuli, words flashed subliminally, seem to have a stronger effect on unconscious processing than pictures did in this group.
Words over images. Okay.
And perhaps more surprisingly, they found significant differences based on gender and personality traits. Specifically, females in the study who scored high on neuroticism showed greater permeability in their unconscious perceptual processes.
Greater permeability, meaning they were more influenced by the subliminal stuff.
That seems to be the implication. It suggests our subconscious isn't just this generic processor. It's intertwined with our personality, our emotional tendencies, and these factors can influence how readily unconscious information gets through and potentially sways our choices.
So our personality might make us more or less susceptible to subconscious influence.
That's what this particular study hints at. Yeah, lots to unpack there.
Definitely. Now, we've covered a lot of fascinating, almost magical sounding stuff, but as responsible guides here, we need to bring in some balance, right? Acknowledge the skepticism.
Absolutely critical. It's really important to remember that not all claims about the subconscious, especially some of the more exotic ones, are universally accepted or rigorously proven by mainstream science.
So how do we approach this critically? Where does the skepticism come in?
Well, for instance, digging into our sources, we found comments from a Reddit discussion where people were quite critical. Some users specifically questioned ideas like surrendering to the quantum field.
Quantum field, how does that relate?
Some popular interpretations link subconscious phenomena to quantum physics, but critics argue, often quite strongly, that there's very little, if any, solid scientific evidence showing quantum mechanical effects playing a role in large, warm, wet systems, like the human brain.
Okay, so questioning the proposed mechanism.
Exactly. And another point of critique we found relates back to that definition of the cerebellum we mentioned earlier.
The part storing habits and attitudes.
Right. A critique pointed out that, according to standard neuroanatomy, like in the Encyclopedia Britannica, basic functions like breathing aren't controlled by the cerebellum, but by parts of the hindbrain, the pons and medulla.
So, a factual correction.
Potentially. The critique emphasizes that, honestly, what the different parts of the brain do is complicated and not completely understood. So we should be cautious about overly simplistic definitions.
That's fair. Neuroscience is complex and evolving.
Absolutely. And that's why a healthy dose of skepticism is so valuable when exploring these topics. We want to encourage you, the listener, to engage critically with all the information, weigh the evidence, and decide what resonates and makes sense for you.
Good advice. Okay, with that critical lens firmly in place, let's move into debunking some common myths about changing the subconscious and look at more practical wisdom.
Yeah, let's tackle those myths. They can really hold people back. First one up, myth, #1. Your subconscious mind is always working in your favor.
Well, that sounds nice, but probably not true.
Not quite, no. The reality, according to our sources, is that the subconscious prioritizes familiarity and safety much more than growth or your highest aspirations.
Safety first, even if safety means staying stuck.
Pretty much. It absorbs all your past experiences, your learned beliefs, your fears, and it forms these internal scripts. And these scripts often pull you back towards what feels known and predictable, even if that known space isn't where you consciously want to be.
So it's aligned with your past, not necessarily your future goals.
Exactly. It's designed to keep you consistent with who you've been, not necessarily help you become someone new.
Okay, so practically speaking, what can we do about that?
Awareness is key. When you find yourself hesitating, procrastinating, or self-sabotaging, pause and ask, what does my subconscious think it's protecting me from right now?
Protecting me from failure, rejection.
Could be anything. Rejection, failure, judgment, discomfort, even the perceived dangers of success. Just bringing that underlying fear into conscious awareness is the crucial first step to disarming it.
Okay, good takeaway. What's myth number 2?
Myth #2. Changing your subconscious takes years and years of hard work.
The slow and steady wins the race approach.
Kind of, but the myth implies it has to be a long, arduous slog. And while repetition definitely plays a role in reinforcing new patterns,
It doesn't have to take forever.
apparently not. The truth seems to be that the subconscious is highly responsive to a few key things: your sense of identity, strong emotion, and clarity of intention. When you make a decisive shift in your self-concept, change can actually happen much faster than many people expect.
Shifting your identity.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Think about that quote from James Clear. Every action you take is a vote for the person you wish to become.
So focusing on being the person, not just doing the action.
Exactly. Instead of just trying to force a new habit, focus on embodying the identity of someone for whom that habit is natural.
Can you give a practical example?
Sure. Let's say you want to be more confident. Instead of just focusing on acting confident, start each morning by writing down present tense identity statements. Things like, I am confident and decisive. I'm a person who speaks up effectively.
Writing them down as if they're already true?
Yes. These aren't just wishful thinking. They act as powerful cues, instructions for your subconscious to start aligning with this new desired version of yourself. It speeds things up.
Okay, identity is powerful. What's the last myth?
Myth #3. If you just try hard enough, use enough willpower, you'll eventually break through.
The grit and grind philosophy. What's wrong with that?
Well, the mindset itself often leads straight to burnout. Because relying on willpower alone, especially when your subconscious beliefs aren't aligned, is like, well, it's that car analogy again.
Driving with one foot on the gas and one on the brake.
Exactly. Your conscious mind, willpower, is pushing forward, but your deeper subconscious programming, old beliefs, fears, is pulling you back or holding you in place. It's exhausting and often ineffective long term.
So what's the alternative to just pushing harder?
Alignment. Real sustainable change doesn't come from brute force. It comes when your subconscious beliefs genuinely support your conscious desires. When they're aligned, progress starts to feel more natural, even effortless, less like a constant battle.
Getting the gas and brake working together, how do we find that alignment?
Identify an area where you feel like you're pushing really hard but just not getting the results you want. Then ask yourself a powerful question. What underlying belief could be making this so hard? And what belief could make this feel easier or even inevitable?
Finding the belief that's acting as the brake.
Yes, and then consciously choosing to reframe it. For example, maybe you're struggling in your career pushing hard because you believe, I need to constantly prove myself.
Yeah.
That creates pressure and resistance.
Right.
What if you shifted that belief to something like, I'm here to serve, create impact, and learn? Can you feel how that different belief might change your energy, your approach, and ultimately your results? It's about finding a belief that unlocks flow instead of resistance.
That makes a lot of sense. Shifting the underlying belief changes the whole dynamic.
Precisely.
Okay, so this power, this ability to align and reprogram, it obviously extends to overcoming common struggles like fears and bad habits, right?
Hey.
And maybe even improving relationships.
Absolutely. Let's talk about fear first. The sources suggest you can overcome fear primarily by, well, doing the thing you're afraid of, taking action despite the fear.
Easier said than done sometimes.
True, but also by consistently replacing those fearful thoughts with constructive, positive ones and actively cultivating feelings of confidence and faith. Abnormal fear, as one source puts it, is basically just your imagination running wild in a negative direction.
Imagination running riot.
Yeah. So the solution is to consciously redirect your imagination towards the opposite, towards the desired positive outcome. Mentally move to the opposite pole.
Like the young lady with stage fright we mentioned earlier.
Exactly. She didn't just wish the fear away, she actively imagined and affirmed confidence until that became her dominant mental state.
And the medical student with exam amnesia.
Same principle. He realized his fear-charged thoughts, I'm going to fail, We're literally causing his subconscious to make him blank out. His imagination was creating the negative reality.
So he changed the mental movie.
Yes, he shifted to vividly imagining his mother congratulating him on passing, feeling the joy and relief. He aligned his imagination with success, and he overcame the amnesia.
Okay, what about bad habits or addictions? Like, say, excessive drinking.
Our sources frame addiction, like alcoholism, often as an unconscious attempt to escape reality, to find peace or oblivion, however misguidedly.
An escape mechanism.
Yeah. So the proposed cure isn't just about stopping the behavior, but about changing the underlying mental pattern. It involves consistently thinking about, imagining, and feeling freedom, sobriety, perfect health, and mental peace.
Filling the mind with the opposite state.
Exactly. There's an anecdote about a man who overcame alcoholism this way. He made it a regular practice, multiple times a day, to affirm calmly and with feeling. My mind is full of peace, poise, balance, and equilibrium. The infinite intelligence within guides me. I am now completely free from this habit.
He focused on the positive state he wanted.
Yes, he saturated his mind with the idea and feeling of freedom and balance. And according to the source, he experienced a complete transformation within about a month by consistently feeding his subconscious this new reality.
That's powerful. Now, what about human relations? How does the subconscious fit in there?
It's described again as this recording machine. It faithfully reproduces your habitual thinking about other people and your experiences with other people.
So how I think about someone influences how they react to me.
That's the idea. Thinking well of others is, in a sense, thinking well of yourself and projecting that outwards. It's like a psychological version of the golden rule.
Yeah.
Your inner assumptions about others tend to be reflected back to you.
And the opposite is also true. Negative thoughts about others
Are seen as poisoning your own mind first. Holding on to resentment, hatred, criticism. These don't just harm your relationships. They can apparently manifest physically in your own body and create negativity in your interactions.
Can you give an example of changing this pattern?
Sure. There's the story of a businessman who had a really strained, difficult relationship with his superiors. He felt they were unfair, critical, constantly finding fault.
Sounds stressful.
Very. But then he learned about this principle, so he started to practice. Several times a day, he would quietly sit and radiate feelings of love, peace, and goodwill towards his bosses in his thoughts. He imagined them being guided and blessed.
Sending them good vibes, basically.
Essentially, yes. Focusing on their well-being and affirming harmony. He did this consistently, and the outcome. Within about 2 weeks, his bosses called him in, praised his recent work, told him he was an asset, and gave him a promotion and a raise.
Just from changing his inner thoughts about them.
That's how the story is presented. His inner shift seemed to transform the outer dynamic. Another quick one. A private secretary who apparently disliked her female colleagues intensely and had constant friction.
Okay.
She started practicing a specific prayer pattern, affirming the spiritual qualities, harmony, peace, love within herself, and acknowledging them in her colleagues. Her whole atmosphere at work changed, becoming much more harmonious.
It's about changing the inner recording.
Seems to be. And one more, an actor who early in his career got booed off stage and developed a real hatred for audiences.
Oh, wow. That'd be tough for an actor.
Right. His career stalled. Then he changed his approach. Before every performance, he started sincerely praying for his audience, sending them love, wishing them inspiration and peace.
Turning hatred into goodwill.
Exactly. And the source says he became a truly great and beloved actor, known for the way he could connect with and uplift his audience. His inner shift transformed his stage presence.
This all seems to lead towards the idea of forgiveness, doesn't it?
It really does. Forgiveness is presented as essential. Life itself is inherently forgiving. Think about how a cut on your finger heals if you let it. Nature moves towards healing.
So guilt and resentment are like blocking that natural healing.
That's the perspective offered. Guilt complexes often stem from false concepts about ourselves or God or life. And holding on to resentment and hatred towards others is seen as a primary cause of many mental and physical maladies.
So how do we forgive according to these ideas, especially someone really hurt us?
The key insight is that forgiveness isn't about condoning the wrong action. It's about freeing yourself. The word itself, forgive, can mean to give something for.
Give something for? What?
Give love, peace, joy, goodwill for the injury received. You do this mentally, wishing the other person well, sending them positive thoughts, until there's no sting left in your mind regarding the incident. It's an internal release process that benefits you most of all.
Releasing the poison from your own system.
Exactly.
Okay, one final area touched upon is aging. How does the subconscious relate to getting older?
The perspective here is quite uplifting, actually. Old age isn't presented as a decline to be feared, but as a natural process of change that should be welcomed. It brings opportunities for growth in wisdom, understanding, and spiritual awareness.
So the mind doesn't have to decline with the body.
That's the core message. Your mind does not grow old. Your body inevitably changes and slows down, yes, but your consciousness, your spirit, your capacity for learning and joy, these are timeless. You are essentially as young, as strong, as vibrant, and as useful as you think and feel you are.
So mindset is key to aging well.
Absolutely. Rejecting societal narratives and propaganda about decrepitude and limitation is crucial. Holding on to a vision of yourself as vital and purposeful.
Is there an example of this?
Yes, former U.S. President Herbert Hoover was mentioned. He was apparently incredibly active, writing books, traveling, fully engaged with life, well into his late 80s. Full of life and enthusiasm. His mind clearly hadn't retired.
A model of an ageless mind.
Exactly. The encouragement is for people, especially in retirement, not to become prisoners of society's limiting beliefs about age, but to be producers, to pursue new studies, develop new talents, travel, contribute, to know that life is always unfolding and your mind continues to grow and expand indefinitely.
That's a really positive and empowering way to look at aging.
Isn't it? It frames it as a continuation of growth, not an ending.
Okay, wow. So just to recap, we've journeyed pretty deep into the subconscious mind today. We've seen its incredible power, how it seems to run maybe 95% of our lives on this autopilot.
Yeah, influencing everything, our health, our finances, our relationships, how we deal with fears, just everything.
And we explored some really fascinating techniques claimed to help us access and maybe even reprogram this powerful inner dimension. Things like intentionally shifting brainwave states.
Right, using visualization, the mental movie method, affirmations, auto-suggestion, even those argumentative and decree methods. Lots of tools in the potential toolkit.
We also busted some common myths, didn't we? Like the idea that the subconscious is always on your side.
When actually it prioritizes familiarity, yeah. And the myth that change has to take ages, when shifting identity can speed things up.
And that just trying harder, pure willpower is the answer.
When alignment between conscious desire and subconscious belief is actually the key to making progress feel more natural.
And we touched on its role in the mind-body connection, in healing, even in subtle decision-making, and wrapped up with that inspiring idea of an ageless mind.
It's a vast and powerful aspect of ourselves, no doubt about it.
It really is. So here's a final thought to leave you with, something to maybe mull over. If it's true, as our sources suggest, that your subconscious mind accepts as true whatever your conscious mind consistently believes and feels to be true, and if that same subconscious mind is controlling potentially 95% of your daily thoughts, feelings, and actions, then it really makes you stop and think, doesn't it?
It really does.
What foundational beliefs are you currently holding about yourself, about your potential, about your life? Take a really honest look. Are those beliefs truly serving your deepest desires, your highest aspirations?
And the big question follows.
How might your day-to-day reality, your health, your work, your relationships, your sense of peace, how might all of that begin to transform if you started to consciously, meticulously choose the orders, the beliefs, the feelings you feed into this incredible, powerful inner world? What might become possible then?